a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for September 8th, 2022. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, Daddy Xbox and Daddy PlayStation are fighting in the press, and Kojima's first podcast is out. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's Patrick Klepek from Waypoint. Patrick, how are you doing?
Daddy Xbox, is that a new name for the queen that I'm unaware of?
That's right. Yes, exactly. I just tweeted this, but I'm going to do the joke anyhow. It feels like The Rock is going to come out and be like, announce he's proud to be an American. Ladies and gentlemen, we got her. Like any second now. That's just what it feels like right now. I know it's so strange. It's really strange. I'm like, as someone who doesn't normally pay attention to the royal family stuff at all, this is like a weird one. I'm like, can we joke about this? I think I'm going to joke about it.
I think so. My interactions with the Queen are occasionally watching a teaser trailer for the new season of The Crown and being like, that seems like I might watch that.
Yeah.
But also I think I'd fall asleep. So, Congrats on your Emmys, Crown.
Yeah, my friends who like that show pretty much describe it as a good show to fall asleep to. So it might work out well.
I watched several seasons of Downton Abbey. I feel like I got enough royalty from then they made 2 movies and I was like, I'm good.
Yes.
I don't need any more of this world.
Honestly, after the second movie, same. I'm like, people like said, oh, it's so much better. I'm like, it's okay. I love Downton Abbey, but I don't need any more movies. But yeah, so the Queen's gonna die or is dead. Who knows? This is what you come to this show for.
We're here like all the British broadcasters, like just killing time, right?
Yeah,
killing.
All right. Okay. Well, you know what? Let's get into this mess. But before we do that, most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life together. That includes breaking news, the catch up where we discuss the biggest topics consuming the lives of gamers everywhere, and maybe even bring in some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. Hello, Twitch. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Let's get into this. Let's start the morning mess with Sony says Xbox's offer to keep Call of Duty games on PlayStation is inadequate. In a statement to The Verge last week, Xbox boss Phil Spencer said Microsoft had committed to making the series available on PlayStation for several more years after Sony's current marketing deal with Activision expires. During this period, Call of Duty games released on PlayStation would have feature and content parity, according to Spencer. Now, when Phil said this, he said he was referring to a letter he sent to Jim Ryan and that a conversation they had back in January that Phil seemed to feel the need to make public, likely very much due into a response to what is happening in the UK with regulators saying, we're going to look a little bit more deeply at what's happening over here, right? So now Jim Ryan is responding. He went to his good friends at GI Biz and said, I had not intended to comment on what I understood to be a private business discussion, but I feel the need to set the record straight because Phil Spencer brought this into the public forum. Microsoft has only offered for Call of Duty to remain on PlayStation for 3 years after the current agreement between Activision and Sony ends. After almost 20 years of Call of Duty on PlayStation, their proposal was inadequate on many levels and failed to take account of the impact on our gamers. We want to guarantee PlayStation gamers continue to have the highest quality Call of Duty experience, and Microsoft's proposal undermines this principle. There's a few things to unpack here, but what's like your first response to all this, Patrick?
The pre-show, we doing an audio test. We were talking about wrestling, and all I can think about watching this is wrestling. It's promos. It is promos. Jim Ryan needs a better writer. Like he's got a long history of not being very good at this. I mean, look, this is what the head of Sony is supposed to do in this situation. What they are supposed to do is to try and drag out an acquisition that by all accounts is going to happen despite increased scrutiny happening in Europe and the US. This, by all accounts, this is going to happen. But hey, if you could get a couple of concessions from Xbox along the way by just wanting you to shut the fuck up, like this is what you do. I mean, it's like it's a minor thing, but like I recently thought about the most recent Saints Row, which was a game where it was the first time in a long time where a PR person told me, no, we don't want to give you code. And I was like, wow, that's just straight shooting. Usually
incredible.
It was phrased like slightly nicer than that, but like that was usually what happens when you don't get access to something is they just ignore you, or hey, we're putting you on a list, or like maybe we can get you one at launch.
We'll get back to you, right?
And that code is like conspicuous to the end of day at launch, so you can't write anything after. And that was a PR person doing the right thing. They probably had researched that like I hadn't been super high in what I'd seen about the game. So why, in God's name, would you give me a code? Right. I'm probably just going to tell you that I don't like the game. And then I played it and I didn't like the game. So they were just doing their job. And so I am in no world like out here thinking I need to stan Jim Ryan. The guy seems to have made a number of questionable mistakes internally and externally about how he talks to his studios, how he talks to like players and customers. But in this specific instance, this is like good guy Phil Spencer, good guy Microsoft. It's a lot of them buttoning up the suit. Like, we love unions. Shut the fuck up. No, you don't. Like, you're just trying to look good as like union popularity is up a bit in the public eye, and you're going through a regulatory scrutiny right as the like Democrats in power are like trying to do just at least a tiny bit more scrutiny along the way, a touch more. So like the long and short of it is this is just a bunch of talk. If Sony comes out of this with, I don't know, an extra year or two of commitment, or I don't know, like we're not going to like require that it's cloud-based streaming through a Game Pass app for a year or two, which is probably where Microsoft would want to go with this in the future on a PlayStation platform, then Sony wins, and like nobody remembers this in 6 months.
Yes, exactly. You know, as much as Jim Ryan puts his foot in his mouth all the time, he at least he seems to understand that he has a little bit of power right now, and if he doesn't use it right now, he's going to lose it. And he also seems to be using it in a place where that power is concentrated, a place like the UK, where I'm sure he has a lot of ties to people who also maybe have some hands on the lever of power in the government there, because that's his home country, and he's, you know, a rich guy there, and he's like, my home territory, I can make a stand here. Maybe something can happen. And you're right, he's not expecting to derail the whole deal. There's just there's too much momentum behind it. It's too much money, and the arguments are too flimsy based on the current precedents for what this what is expected when mergers and acquisitions are first looked at. Even the United States, we talk about there being a little bit more. They're scrutinizing things a little bit more. They're testing smaller mergers off to the side.
Yes. Not
these ones. These ones are like, well, we're just going to have to let these ones through because it'd be weird to stop this one after we didn't do this and this and this. But maybe we can slowly build up to get to something. And if something like this happens again in the future, maybe we could stop it then. But they're just in like the prototyping phase for new regulation, and they don't even know if that's going to work. So, yeah, this is Jim Ryan, Sony just doing what they can to maybe like, instead of just getting concessions from Microsoft, maybe they can get it baked into the agreement that Microsoft would have with several regulators around the world to make it firmer for a longer period of time. And that would benefit them for sure. Because it's like right now, the Minecraft deal is almost certainly a verbal agreement, a rolling agreement that goes, hey, every couple of years, let's talk. Are we cool? Yeah, we're cool. That's probably how it went from like, oh, we are only going to have the original Java version or whatever of Minecraft on PlayStation to now we have the unified version that runs on everything and has crossplay. Like, they probably continue to have conversations, and that changed over time. I think Jim Ryan would just like to be like, let's have some fundamental understanding that is enforced on a legal level by regulators, and that will give us a little bit stronger footing in those conversations going forward. Because he sees the long-term play here. He's not stupid. He knows that, like you said, Microsoft putting on the happy face. They have learned that a long time ago after the Netscape stuff, that if we put on the happy face, we don't get called into Congress as often as Twitter and Facebook and Apple do. And they don't. They're really good at diplomacy. So they know the long-term play here is to build up their power at Microsoft and Xbox so they can put pressure on the market and shape the market how they want. And so if he can make any sort of headway now, that'll benefit them in the long run. And I think that regardless of what happens, like Call of Duty is still going to come out in PlayStation. There's just too much money there, and you know,
that's the thing. Like it makes this specific squabbling interesting to me because I would be so curious to know what the numbers are that are actually driving the underlying argument. Is it purely petty and posturing? Is there actual like genuine worry within Sony? Like, it's just because it's a franchise that the trajectory is not on the up and up. Call of Duty will remain, even in its worst, like even if it was to like quality wise continue descending, it will remain a Madden-like staple for a generation to come. It is just one of those franchises that is an institution. It will be its floor is extremely high. Its ceiling is a lot lower than it used to be. But it just makes me wonder why this game, why like, what is it about Sony wanting to like kind of draw the line here? Maybe because it's the one they think they can grasp onto because of the existing marketing deal. So it feels like you're taking something away as opposed to a Starfield in which it was just a logo on a trailer. But
it's got a part of it's got to be Call of Duty drives subscriptions to PlayStation Plus because you need it to play online. And it's like, so there's like a domino effect. There's a knock-on effect where, we get 30% of everything that Call of Duty sells, and that's a lot of money. It really is. It's like a billion plus like a year or whatever.
Well, see, then that seems to tie into their, like their pre-existing, positions on things like crossplay, multiplayer. Like essentially, it all comes back to, hey, we like our cut, we like the people on our platform. The notion of giving up any of that, especially for a company who, yes, they're making inroads on the PC, but like broadly speaking, like they like their platform, their cut, their little island, while the rest of the world is moving towards a more ubiquitous and the tides are pulling against Sony in that direction financially. I don't mean to suggest they're in any sort of trouble. Obviously, like the sales of PlayStation 5 are going to be just as strong with them just arbitrarily increasing the price and claiming it's a supply chain issue and conspicuously not raising the price in the one part of the world in which they have a modicum of competition occurring. So it all just comes down to money and like playing the short and the long-term game. My guess is actually that Call of Duty remains like multi-platform as long as that is advantageous to Microsoft. Right. The moment that Call of Duty slipped into some sort of B tier, well, then Sony doesn't care at that point.
Exactly, yeah.
Anyway, and then that just becomes a portfolio expander for Microsoft. But, I would expect that as long as it is a like S-tier franchise, I don't know if it's that anymore. I feel like for most people I know these days that still play Call of Duty, they're playing Warzone. They're not as interested in the mainline
game
games.
That 100% will be on PlayStation forever.
Correct, because there's so much money for everybody. Yes. And like that seems like where this is going is Call of Duty's eventual fate is Warzone sequels and expansions. It is not these single player multiplayer. You said like
the trajectory is not up. It's like it's sideways. It's going to be like more Call of Duty off to the side in more different ways. Probably putting like zombies mode as its own thing as well off to the side and like letting these things propagate. And like capitalizing more on the same audience and not that audience necessarily growing much. Although I'm sure Warzone will continue getting bigger. But yeah, overall, it's not going to be that same growth that they had before. To kind of switch back a little bit to the like the home territory, Jim Ryan like trying to like make stuff happen in the UK. This just goes back to what the CMA, the regulator, the FTC equivalent in the UK said. This is a quote: PlayStation currently has a larger share of the console gaming market than Xbox. But the CMA considers that Call of Duty is sufficiently important that losing access to it, or losing access on competitive terms, could significantly impact Sony's revenues and user base, it said. This impact is likely to be felt especially at the launch of the next generation of consoles, where gamers make fresh decisions about which consoles to buy. The CMA believes that the merger could, therefore, significantly weaken Microsoft's closest rival to the detriment of overall competition in the console gaming. So, okay, and I don't want to be like, again, speaking like tinfoil hat or anything. That sounds like Jim Ryan said, hey, this is what I feel, and the CMA is like, this is what we feel now. It sounds like repeating exactly what Sony's concerns would be, and I guess that's what they're saying they're trying to represent, but that's also just typical marketplace competition, these companies trying to vie one way or the other, and I guess maybe there is something to the timing of Microsoft saying, we'll give you 3 years on top of the current 3-year deal. That is 6 years. That's probably right when the next generation, that's like on the later side of maybe when the next generation would start. So maybe there's something there, but also like Microsoft was never going to say in perpetuity for something like this. They can't say that. That's wild. You can't say you can't have Sony coming back to you in 50 years and saying you said you would make Call of Duty for whatever we're making. So of course they're not going to say that. So it's like, if they were just like, hey, it's kind of like the Minecraft deal, you would expect them to be okay, unless they're like, maybe we can get more, and that's exactly what we keep saying Jim Ryan was trying to do, right?
I did in that point about the next gen transition, whenever that comes along in the next 5 to 7 years, is an interesting one, because so much of this generation feels like table setting for the next one in terms of where the real seismic shifts are going, like the existence of Game Pass, cloud stuff, whether that becomes ubiquitous and mainstream, like too early to say, but it does feel like a lot of what Xbox is doing is spinning plates and setting up dominoes to fall for the future, right? Like they spent a bunch of money. They still can't publish a goddamn game to save their life. That was a problem in the previous generation. It remains a problem this generation. I mean, even COVID stuff aside, you can spend all the money you want, but that isn't necessarily going to give you studios that continually pump out quality games. Now, on the other side, I hear the quality of life in a lot of Sony studios is not great. And like the God of War team has been on a interesting warpath for a while. And so that game will ship. That game's going to come out. And not to necessarily suggest that everything at Xbox is hunky-dory equivalently, but Sony at least has a history of their games coming out, and Microsoft has a history of flashy CG teaser trailers and then wondering when those games are going to come out a couple of years later.
Right. We are I honestly, the table setting, I don't think you could be more right about that. I think that everything with Game Pass is about making sure that they spend money now so they are not in a position where in 5 to 10 years someone else did this and they have to spend that much more to acquire that company. Like, if we do it now, this is the first time that we've come up with an idea that feels like it's an inevitable future in one way or the other with Game Pass, whether that is cloud, whether it is still on devices, whatever. This model of acquiring games feels like an inevitable future. And every other time we've had to try to catch up with the Zune, or we've had to try to come back around and fight Chrome or whatever with our browser, and it's like taking forever. Now we are basically just Chrome. It's like this is the first time that they've been in this position in a very long time. And so they are spending a lot of money, and I think Phil Spencer has had this conversation with Satya Nadella and said, look, we are in this position. If we spend a lot of money, it's going to pay off dividends next time around. All we have to do is play a waiting game when no one else can wait with us when it comes to spending money on these terms. And I think it's just such an obvious thing at a certain point that Sony does feel like we got to first of all, we got to get our money now while we can. So raise the price of the PlayStation. And then second, we need to figure out some stuff long term. And so invest in a ton of live service stuff, because that's the stuff we can rely on to reliably make money well into the future, regardless of what happens with anyone else. So, yeah. I think they're going to keep sniping back and forth a little bit. This does feel like maybe it's going to be the peak of it. They probably be like, all right, we throw a little bit of our haymakers.
Yeah, this feels like closing arguments. Like, all right, like a couple more darts at the wall before regulators will, hem and haw for a little bit. But this seems destined by the end of the year that we're, Microsoft will finally get to announce that Heretic 2 is coming to Game Pass because Raven Software used to be an incredible, unique studio located in Madison, Wisconsin. Back in an era when there were very few Midwest studios. Now that's changed.
Madison's got a few other teams, right? They got the PUBG team.
Yeah, Iron Galaxy. I don't know about those
no, that's the
clowns.
That Clown Factory, whatever.
They do exist. But Heretic 2 is one of my all-time favorites. And so when they acquired ZeniMax, I was like, that's great. I can get... that's right. That's Hex and Heretic. That's me. And it's like, oh no, Activision owns the rights to that. So finally, my dreams come true. Microsoft has acquired the two companies I need them to acquire so that I can have Heretic 2 on Game Pass.
We'll move on in a second, but do you think there's any chance of, I think like Toys for Bob, right? They'll get extracted from Call of Duty and be able to work on other stuff once they're at Microsoft a little bit more. And even Activision has said they're thinking about doing that. Raven Software working on Warzone, that's them forever now, right? There's no way they ever get to work on anything else.
I mean, what I would say is never say never, except that studio's identity is staffed up to be the kind of company, right? And so
the toothpaste is out of the tube situation, right? They just kind of can't.
You would have to hire in a different direction, right? Like the staff that works there my guess is the people that wanted to work on original IP or even like franchise IP, like when they did, was it Return to Castle Wolfenstein, like a game that I know people like kind of liked. That's one of the few that I didn't play. It was like open world. That's just a different team, right? Like so sure, Raven, they could look at that as like, it would be nice to have, you know, a studio in the Midwest, like cheaper cost of living, you know, people like to live everywhere now, like maybe, but I think it's more likely that, like a Toys for Bob, a studio with like a very recent history of having produced games, maybe still has some of that institutional knowledge, given a chance to get off of the Call of Duty treadmill. I mean, frankly, it's better for Microsoft. It's better for Sony. It's better for Call of Duty. Those games start becoming, you know, 3-year events. And Warzone steps forward and sort of like takes the brunt of that, gets like the mainstream attention while those games can go back to being events. And then maybe those studios can, you know, maybe publish a game for Microsoft 6 years from now.
Absolutely. Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal officially take control of Tomb Raider and Deus Ex IPs. Let's see here. Crystal Dynamics and Eidos have officially assumed control of the Tomb Raider and Deus Ex franchises, respectively. Embracer Group announced in May that it planned to acquire a large part of Square Enix's Western development arm. And now they've said, we are excited to inform you that Crystal Dynamics has taken control of several game franchises, including Tomb Raider and Legacy of Kain. So, Tam, get ready. It's coming, I'm sure. From the game's previous owner, Square Enix Limited. And that's what Crystal Dynamics said. And then as a result of this change, Crystal Dynamics or its affiliate is now the owner of these games and the controller of the gameplay and personal data related to them. So this is also serves as a, hey, terms of service things that might be changing or whatever. This, you know, obviously this stuff was always going to happen. I think it's just kind of like, okay, now they can get to work. They can start working on these games under Embracer. Who knows what that actually looks like? What I've heard when it comes to Eidos, and I've talked about this before, so like no brand new scoops or anything, but Eidos pitched a new Deus Ex immediately. They said they wanted to make it the Cyberpunk that Cyberpunk wasn't. That is very, very early. I don't even know if it got greenlit or whatever, but like that's where their head is at. And they have another project that's like a kids on bike genre game, like Stranger Things or E.T. So, and that would probably come first anyhow. And I'm like, well, that sounds pretty cool too. And then Crystal Dynamics already confirmed to be like going full steam ahead with Tomb Raider, right? So, you know, I'm like at I'm still trying to figure out what Embracer is going to do with all these teams. And after Saints Row, it feels like
that is where I sit as well. On one hand, Soul Reaver. Yeah. Where are you? Come back to me. Give me all these remasters. Give me a fucking Soul. I loved the Dreamcast version of I loved the Dreamcast version of Soul Reaver because it gave me some anti-aliasing, like cleaned up those textures. Love Soul Reaver, all time.
HD texture pack, whatever. Just put it back out again. Yeah.
But yeah, the post Embracer or post Saints Row Embracer is just, I don't know what that company takes away from that project. Yeah. I don't know how it's sold. Like, I don't know what their budget expectations were.
Like it sold okay. It definitely sold.
Like it sold okay, and the budget was probably okay as well.
Exactly.
But the question I have is, even for people that are happy with the game that came out, right? Like, if we extrapolate, is that the baseline, like what Embracer considers a AAA game? Is like this is sort of the type of we're going to balance between games of relatively modest budget and expectations with a lot of IP remasters, updates that are cheap for us to produce and make, you know, if done well, like the Destroy All Humans like updates, people seem pretty happy with those. Like they seem to have done a decent job, like going back in, adding quality of life improvements, getting them on modern platforms. Like it's not a bad business model, but it's like there's a bit of a monkey's paw here, which is like, do I want Legacy of Kain to come back? Yes. Do I want Legacy of Kain like the Saints Row game we just got? Like no, probably not. And so that is where, like, you mentioning a potential Deus Ex game is like, you say Cyberpunk, and like putting aside how much of a mess that game was, it's a hugely expensive, massive swing of a game that is going to take 5 to 6, like, that's a game that comes out optimistically at the end of this generation, or like kicks off the next generation.
And you're talking like not just like matching Cyberpunk 5 to 6 years. Then you have to exceed it because it's 5 or 6 years later now, and games continue to get bigger. At that point,
Witcher, which we're going to talk about later, they'll be showing development footage of that game in UE5. Like the scope of saying you're going to make that kind of game that is a scary proposition. It's easy for me to imagine a more modest Deus Ex game, but if you're pitching, we want to do Cyberpunk, but a generation later, like my mind, I just don't. I'd love if Embracer just allowed them to run wild. And maybe they will. Maybe Saints Row is just a blip. Agents of Mayhem was not very good either. Like my expectations for Saints Row were pretty low. It's funny because Volition is located in Champaign, Illinois, which is connected to University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, the school I trained for journalism at, also known as got drunk and already had connections in the video game industry. But the way that studio worked was, I don't know if it's still the case, but U of I Urbana-Champaign is a engineering school. And so the reason Volition was so well known for its excellent technology was because they would be able to grab cheap world-class engineers that didn't want to stop getting drunk on Green Street, which is like the main strip of bars. So they could live locally, still have their friends nearby that were maybe like younger and still in school, but then also go work at a big boy job at Volition. And this is during like the Red Faction era, and was Geomod, right?
Yeah, that was the name of the engine, right? Yes, the where you could like shoot the walls and it would like tear away. That totally.
Yes, yeah. So I don't know if that's there's certainly not a company that like technology is not at the height of their stack anymore, and I think you saw that like pretty well demonstrated in the pivot to Agents of Mayhem. So I don't know. I guess I still don't know what to make of what Embracer wants its studios to do.
Exactly. It feels really tough to like put the finger on the pulse of that company. They're not talking. I've asked to like talk to Lars Wingerfors, who's the CEO of the overall group, a couple times.
He did answer my emails when I asked him, why the fuck are you building an underground mountain archive full of video games? And
what was the answer?
They were fine. They were more than just the perfunctories. Like it was clear that he was clear that he sat and wrote this on a flight. Cool. And so he's a hands-on guy. Like he's not someone.
Like I talked to him before, like a long time ago, and so it's like, I'll reach out again, and it's just like it doesn't seem like he's like ready to have the sit down. Here's what we're doing.
I'm not sure they know, right? I mean, that was also a takeaway when I asked, like, why are you collecting every video game, a physical copy of every video game? He's like, What's your plans for the archive? Is it meant to be like a public institution? And so, I mean, I think it's very possible that Embracer is in a similar position, which is like, I don't know where they're at in the acquisition spree. Like, are we cooling down? Are we, where we're at? I expect they'll still be buying some stuff. That's just kind of like the model, but at some point,
the arbitrage there is like still like in favor of them, where like the value in Europe versus the value in other territories is a little bit offset. So even as like the market goes weird, that arbitrage that enables them to do what they've been doing, it still kind of works in their favor. But I don't know. Yeah, it's impossible to know.
At one point, do we get like an Embracer event, right, where it's like Lars comes out, like does the PR tour, and it's like, here are like 3 or 4 pillar announcements of like, this is the future of Embracer.
Here's
like,
Randy Pitchford in the background doing magic. Yeah, he works here too. Yeah.
Did you see him try to sell his ugly ass shirts?
Yes, I did.
For a vague video game scholarship.
Oh man, the Randy Pitchford video game scholarship, funded by shirts, of course.
Free USB drive with every shirt.
What's on it? The Medieval Knights stains on them, so they're extra special. Those are stains from Medieval Knights, I promise. Okay. Oh, Randy. All right, let's keep going here. CD Projekt expects its new Witcher saga to include more than one game. This comes from Tom Ivan at VGC. CD Projekt has confirmed that it's planning to release more than one game as part of the next chapter in the Witcher series. As for more details, during CD Projekt's first half earnings call on Wednesday, President and joint CEO Adam Kaczynski said the company is envisaging, man, I knew I was going to struggle with that, releasing a number
That's
of
not a word. I reject it.
Yeah,
I reject it.
It feels wrong, so it is wrong.
No.
Yes, we are saying no. We're cutting, put a line in the sand now.
We're being real. I'm being an American, and I'm saying that word doesn't exist.
Yeah, get out of here, VGC, with your quotations inside the punctuation. Disgusting. We have in mind more than one, Kaczynski confirmed. The first saga was 3 games, so now we are thinking about more than one game, but we are in pre-production of the first game from the second Witcher saga. Of course, Witcher Saga, they've already announced they're getting back into this. They're going to make it with Unreal 5 instead of the Red engine. Not too surprising that they're thinking long-term about trying to do a very similar thing with The Witcher here, where it can be this thing that people can go back to, and there's multiple games, and it's going to last for a long time. The Witcher is going to be their bread and butter forever, right?
Yeah, I remember thinking the moment that Cyberpunk dropped and the reaction to it was like, wow, someone was assigned today to like given a slip of papers, like come back with a Witcher pitch in a month. That's the project we're doing next. Now, granted, I expected them to continue playing in that universe regardless, but the posture of the studio was the next decade of CD Projekt Red is Cyberpunk. This is the world we're living in. This is, we're going to do these expansions. We're going to acquire some other studios so that we can have those IP remain relevant. They acquired that, what was it, the Flame and the...
Right, I can't remember, but yes, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Yes. They acquired a studio. I think they've said they're working on a game in the Witcher world or an existing franchise. Flame in the Flood. Yes. So it seemed like that was going to be the support structure of like giving people glimpses into these existing worlds that people like while they play around in Cyberpunk. And then it's like, this week, like, Cyberpunk's getting an expansion. Just one. That's one. We're fucking done. Like, we need those people building a Witcher game that we can show in 2 years ASAP. And so, I still have not played Cyberpunk. My take on Cyberpunk was I'm going to wait till that first expansion comes out, and then that seems like the perfect time to finally.
Yeah, there will be a lot of interest too. People will want to hear like your take on it at that point. That's always how it goes.
Well, so it just seemed like the game needed another 18 months, 2 years in the oven to definitely, if not become the game that people wanted, at least more competent and sort of like stapled together. And so the Witcher stuff doesn't shock me. The fact that they're going to make more of those, especially because they need to talk to shareholders, like of course, right? Like, of course, that's what they're going to do. That doesn't mean they give up on doing other stuff, but I don't know. There was the Witcher is a rich vein to tap into, and I adored The Witcher 3 and think the expansion Blood and Wine was actually better than a lot of the baseline Witcher itself. And so that said, they've lost a lot of that talent. Like a lot of the folks that worked on they were Witcher 3, like
very similar to what was happening with Volition, right? Where they had cheap talent right there in Poland, and it's kind of like they weren't exactly being super competitive with wages and stuff. So
like the Bloody Baron quest, so did I. Well, those people don't work there anymore. They started their own studio.
But I mean, to keep the Witcher 3 relevant, they plan to release that new gen update, and they said it's on track for later this year. This also comes from Tom Ivan. CD Projekt has confirmed that the updated version of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt remains scheduled to be released for a new gen consoles and PC later this year. I was kind of wondering as this generation got started, and a big part of it was like these consoles are the same as the last consoles, just way better in every single way, and a lot of games are just going to be better because of stuff like Xbox is doing on a OS level. And so, like, how valuable are these new gen releases going to be? They will continue to be valuable for something like this, where we just want people to remember Witcher 3. And so here it is. And yeah, the updates are, trivial to a certain extent, but whatever. We'll add some support for some of the newer features. 1440p support for PlayStation 5, whatever. They just added that. So I think it's it serves marketing purposes now more than anything else, right?
Yeah, and I mean that combat was okay-ish when that game launched, but the writing, the characters, the world are still best in class. Because I don't have time to play through a 200-hour game again, but my guess is plenty of people will. And as popular as that game is, this game is now coming out. This update will be post Witcher series being extremely popular on Netflix, and it's going to get exposed to just a whole slew of new people. So
the show already had that effect on the game. It was the second best year since the year it came out. Right. Like in terms of sales. So now having this updated version, as people are watching the show and are looking for stuff to play on their new consoles that they almost certainly bought throughout the pandemic or whatever. Yeah, that's something that could totally work for them. GameStop announces partnership with FTX. This is from Bloomberg. GameStop Corp shares were up on Thursday after the video game retailer announced a partnership with cryptocurrency exchange FTX US. suggesting the company is making strides in its strategy shift to non-fungible tokens. But analysts were still skeptical about the long-term growth prospects after the company reported a decline in sales and a wider loss in the second quarter. GameStop said Wednesday it will collaborate with FTX US on one of the biggest cryptocurrency exchanges on new e-commerce and online marketing initiatives and will begin carrying FTX gift cards in select stores. The financial terms of the partnership weren't disclosed. GameStop shares, which are down 35% this year, rose about 7% in pre-market trading. Yeah, I mean, this is GameStop's lifeline, which doesn't feel like much of a lifeline. Obviously, they are coming out of the GameStop Reddit stuff of people being like, hey, this is a meme stock, let's get on that. And now they are still mostly riding high because it never should have been this inflated in the first place. So its stock is still, even as it comes down, well above where it really should be based on their fundamentals. And yet they don't have a next step forward. So this is their best hope. And it feels like a miserable best hope at best, right?
Yeah, I do my best to... One only has so much energy in the day, and to dedicate any of that to the dying gas of a company that is irrelevant except for a bunch of weirdo amateur traders is just not like when your next move is, well, have you heard of this crypto winter? Well, we're hoping climate change is going to change that, and that the NFTs are going to be warming up. It's pathetic. The company has no interesting direction. This constantly feels like, what is a stunt that we can announce to get attention so that people will talk about us, which will then, the fact that fandoms are, I mean, the more interesting part of this is how sticky is this notion of fandom, memes, standing, going to infiltrate the marketplace and the stock market. Obviously it's something that was kind of borne out really transparently during COVID and most transparently with GameStop. But is that just the world we live in? Is it now, Elon Musk goes on SNL and yells about Dogecoin and then everyone's buying and selling? Is that just unfortunately, probably the world we live in? And I'm just curious. I'm less curious about GameStop and more curious where this strain goes next, and what form it takes, because crypto stuff's not going anywhere. Like amateurs messing with the stock market, which does delight me. I mean, look, I will not. My favorite parts of that entire saga were just watching these old chuckle fucks on CNBC just like ripping their hair out, like, no, you can't do this to our financial system. It's here for us to exploit.
Exactly. I mean, that's what it all is about, right? It's all like the whole thing is about there is a way it's supposed to work, and it's all the money is always supposed to go in one direction. And a bunch of people notice that if we do this one thing together, we can force the system to work in our favor. And it was exploiting the market, and it felt weird and kind of bad, but only because we're so used to it feeling bad in that one direction. Like it's normal for, even as things decline and fall apart, for these certain people to keep getting richer because the system was already exploited so long ago that they got it. So when people look around like it's been like this forever, we want to either change it or get in on the action. Of course, people were going to like jump all over that. That's like the fun. And those fundamentals have not changed. People are still looking at, the way the economic system works and feeling exploited at every turn. And so when it's probably not going to be the same thing again, but when another opportunity for something along these lines, whether it is cryptocurrency or meme stocks, it's going to keep happening because people are sort of losing their patience with it. And no one seems to be like, there's a few people talk about addressing the stuff, and that's the best we get, is occasionally someone's like, this is my whole thing, is I think we should address this stuff, and then nothing else ever happens. So just going to keep getting worse. And in the meantime, GameStop's going to try to capitalize on it and kind of look really embarrassing doing it.
I agree.
Multiversus says ACAB. Velma now calls the mystery machine rather than the police for her passive when you collect enough clues. Here's the patch notes from the studio. Instead of calling the police, Velma now solves the mystery and calls the Mystery Inc. gang and the mystery machine to take the bad guys away. This is in response, it seems like, to criticism that people are like, I feel bad calling the police. And I'm like, that rules.
I don't know. I saw this on Twitter right before when this was going around, but it was like, at some point, like seeing clips of Velma calling the cops on LeBron James starts to feel a little weird.
It is. Yes, exactly. And it's kind of like, you could be like, that's not what it's about. Whatever. But it's like, no, it kind of can look that way. We are early enough that if we just change it now, it won't be a big deal as if we were to wait years and years and years and then like change the name of a character who's named after someone who like sexually exploited people at our company, like what happened with Overwatch and stuff like that. And now it's like weird and a problem and people are mad at us. This feels like it's still early enough that like, oh, this is just part of the early patch notes and them figuring out what they want the game to be. It also it kind of rules that they responded to that so quickly though. So I'm glad they made this change. It was a very weird concept. Although it is also pretty weird to be like, I'm going to have my friends come throw you in a van and take you away. That's also kind of strange.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure you're going to have better luck or more fun in the van than in the cop car, but the optics are better. It does seem, I don't really play a ton of these sort of like platform brawlers, and I don't know if Multiversus is going to have, the legs that last, a year from now. But what I will give the team credit for is they seem really responsive to the audience and seem to have a pretty good sense of what the audience does and doesn't want and are really in touch with. So I don't know. Despite not playing that game, never going to play that game. Like, put in Big Chungus. I'm rooting for you, big boy. Get out there. Sure, does that mean Warner Brothers has to trademark a meme? But you know what? Might be worth it. Be worth it.
That's the system we were given, and it's what we need to get this. Then do it. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm kind of rooting for that game. It just seems of all the Smash Brothers style games, other than the ones that have already existed and been kind of successful, like Brawlhalla and games like that. I don't know. This one it comes from a genuine place and seems well made by a team that cares. And so sometimes it's just cool to, is it a feel good story about a corporate cash grab with a franchise mashup? But look, this is the world we live in. This is the world I gotta pick my W's where I can go.
It's also impressive that it's not just, the game is fun. Like you said, Brawlhalla, a lot of those games had that stuff. This one is the first one to capture are they going to put this character into the game, which is always been half the fun of Smash Brothers, at least for the last 10, 15 years. Not the first half of it, but recently it's been a huge part of that game's identity. This game has that going for it, so that's very exciting. Kojima's first podcast is out now in English and Japanese. I listened to about the first half of it, and then I had to get ready for the show. It's weird, Patrick. Are you going to listen to this?
What's the format? Is it just him talking into a microphone? I know that Keeley has a news spot. Or is he trying to take your bit?
Yeah, he's coming for me, man.
Kojima Mess Mornings?
That's the real reason I invited you here today. You got to help me take this Keeley guy out. We got to do something. It's weird. It is... So Kojima is there speaking Japanese and they have the translator. That's all fine. That actually works really well. They start, every time he starts a new thought, it goes, you hear Kojima speaking in Japanese, and then it gets ducked, and the translator comes over top. I think maybe the translation could be a little bit better. They're figuring it out. I really, who am I to criticize that stuff? It's just
frequently translations. Like if you watch any press conference, they're kind of flat, right? They're not necessarily trying to enunciate the same sort of underlying vocal inflections.
Meaning, and the inflections. But what I think that will get better. Whatever. The real weird thing is he's being interviewed by this disembodied a voice of a woman robot lady, and she's like, so you just, and it's like every time she speaks, it's like a zoom in digital effect, and it's like, so you came up with that idea during development, huh? And it's where the hell is this coming from? And then Kojima, it's like obviously the producer asking all this stuff, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna have this voice actress coming on top. It's strange. Mostly it is an inconsequential. The one story that I put here, I'm gonna just get one of these quotes so I can kind of convey to people what happened. He starts he's getting asked about when people came on board his ideas early on. And he talked about Metal Gear there, and he talked about how it was stealth, and he came up with the idea because it was due to limitations, and that people didn't believe in it, and then they did. And that's basically the story. And then he did the same with Boktai. He said, when I tried to make Boktai, everyone was against the idea, but everyone got the idea when it was developed further. Same goes with Death Stranding.
Bad shit.
Yeah,
I'm gonna play a game powered by the sun on a handheld that people cannot be viewed in the sun.
It has a UV as a sunlight sensor on it on the cartridge you put in the Game Boy, so you had to go outside to get the UV lights to hit it so you could then kill vampires. And he's like, so you couldn't really... Yeah, that was the whole idea. Yeah.
But that screen couldn't be seen in direct sunlight.
Yes, it could not. Correct. Listen, Kojima's like, then they got the idea. That was pretty much the entirety of the Boktai story. They didn't get it. I developed further. They got the idea. And then he said the same thing about Death Stranding. Death Stranding is about enjoying the process of traversal, but nobody agreed. Some said if Kojima says so, it's worth a shot, but very few got the process. But everyone got the idea when it was developed to a certain level. What do I do with this? I don't know. It's like, okay, yeah. Once people could see it, they got it. All right. Listen, I get the sense that Kojima's written books about this stuff, like the Creative Gene. I haven't read it or whatever, but I still get the sense that he's not someone who has thought too much about where his ideas come from. They just come to him, and he loves to execute on them, and that's part of the charm here, where he's just going to come up with an idea and do it, and everyone else has to deal with the consequences. But then asking him about it and getting sort of like poking holes in the mystery there, which is like, I don't know, I just had an idea and I did it, and people liked it eventually. It feels a little bit like, okay, what is this podcast really going to be long term? But it's the first episode. I've only listened to the first half.
He's so exact and precise and controlling of his image. And so if you're going to this
the marketing, yeah.
Right. And so, like, even the way you're describing the setup of this podcast, well, it seems like he was probably intimately involved in what questions are we talking about? Like, who's asking them? How are they phrased? What kind of stories are we going to tell? And so, if you just want to hear, Kojima tells a couple of like harmless behind the scenes anecdotes that aren't going to reveal any real tension in the process of making his games that I have to imagine at many points had exhaustive and real tension. I mean, there are worse ways to spend your time. I listen to way too many NFL podcasts, and so I'm not going to tell anyone what they should or shouldn't spend their time with. But even if, someone like Keeley, like, broadly doesn't do, a ton of like quote unquote actual journalism these days, and is mostly sort of like a stand-in between game publishers and a lot of the marketing materials that they do. He does have a lot. Like, he can do this shit. Like, every couple of years, he puts out one of these ebooks, and like I've known Keeley. Like, him and I have similar backgrounds in which, like, I got started writing at a very early age, 13, 14. Like, he did the same thing. I used to correspond with him when he had a website called GameSlice, which was his original gaming blog before he started writing for GameSpot and tricked them into like. And Valve into like, doing a behind the scenes on Half-Life when he was like 17 or whatever. And so I whatever my qualms with like some of what Keeley does these days, like he's got the chops and can pull those up when he chooses to. I'd much rather listen to him semi-candidly talking to Keeley like on a regular basis than this sort of scripted nonsense that it sounds like, is currently in the podcast.
Sorry, my kid just had a real bad sneeze. I'm just checking on her. You okay, kiddo? Okay. Why don't you lay back down? Get some sleep. All right.
We both got sick kids. Fun times.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Let's get to the catch up. RGG Studio confirms RGG Summit 2022 for September 14th at 3 p.m. Pacific time. They're probably going to show Yakuza 8, right?
Yes. Added to a new game in a franchise I've played none of, but now I can't because there's too many. And so what do you expect me to do?
The Yakuza 0 is such a good, like, zero. It implies that there's nothing else out there. It's just 0. I'm just going to try that. I keep trying to convince myself to do that. I've started it a couple times.
I played like 8 hours of it when it came out and was absolutely convinced this could be a thing for me. But the commitment is just so enormous that it is just one of those franchises that I've just kind of quietly written off, and I instead feel like the path for me going forward is not necessarily getting to Yakuza, but getting into the
Judgment.
Judgment, or the designer left, and I was making
the guy at NetEase. Yes, I can't remember his name.
I'm gonna butcher it anyway. But like maybe I'll just get on the ground floor with the new IP.
That's okay.
And that might be my way into it. Negotiate. There we go.
Yes, there we go. Thank you, chat. I still want to play Yakuza Like a Dragon, because I'm like, the reboot with the new characters, the soft reboot, whatever it is, that probably works for me. And I really, for what I've played of 7 Like a Dragon, I've really enjoyed it, and I like the turn-based combat system in there because it's so silly and they really go off the rails in that. Keeping with the theme that there's a lot of stuff happening in September, Capcom confirms the lineup for TGS. It has two events. The first one is going to be at September 15th at 10 a.m. Eastern, and it will be a pre-recorded broadcast that will feature Street Fighter 6, a new trailer for that, as well as Resident Evil Village Gold Edition, Monster Hunter Rises Sunbreak's second free title update, as well as updates on Exoprimal, like where with its characters, its exosuits and dinosaurs.
It's got characters?
I guess so, yeah. And Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, so you can get an update on that as well. Then the next day, they'll have another stream all about Street Fighter 6. It's going to be a deep dive on that, and that'll be at 11 a.m. Eastern. So tons of stuff happening in September with events. I also saw, and I just saw this before, so I didn't get a chance to add this, but there's a People of Color game developer showcase, like a direct, and they're going to have a ton of games in there. And maybe
that's smart.
Yes, it's a really
that's a really good way to showcase like games like that, is like combining the, you know, like whatever you think of the term wholesome and things like that, but like indie developers. Yeah, like collaborating, like having all that stuff in like one pipe is it's a, you know, lifts all boats sort of situation, because
Agreed.
You know, you like me get so many emails on a daily basis with all sorts of games pitched in 1,000 different ways, and like far and away the most effective way to pitch me in my inbox is an animated GIF with a code. And the closest that is to the average person is here's just a bunch of like quick trailers with maybe like a glimpse of the, you know, the team behind it, explaining a little bit about their process. So I think that's really smart that they're doing that. And as an aside, although I'm, you know, look, Capcom making good games, I did a Control F and did not find Dragon's Dogma anywhere in there. And so
yeah, I think you're gonna have to wait a little bit before you hear about that game again, Patrick. I'm sorry. Yep,
that's okay. I will take.
You got the guy in the shirt. The guy in the shirt. What else do you need?
I will take living in the world that Dragon's Dogma 2 exists, because there's a lot of realities where that shouldn't have happened. And
maybe this one again someday, but for now, I mean, that game was supposed to come out, like, in terms of the Capcom hack, not the leak, the hack.
Dogma a lot earlier, yes.
Right.
The little whispers I had heard was that game was a lot earlier than what it's probably going to actually be, which is fine. Cook in the oven, all you need. Plus, Capcom is just on such a roll these days that they don't need to rush.
And they have the tech figured out with RE Engine, so it's like, just focus on making the game good. You could just focus on making the game good. This is fantastic, so good for them. Finally, on a more downer note, River City Ransom director Mitsuhiro Yoshida has passed away. I'm going to include this bit here from WayForward, who has worked with him. Mitsuhiro Yoshida, let's see, they said, "We are saddened to learn of the recent passing of River City Ransom director and a key part of the classic Kunio-kun team, Mitsuhiro Yoshida, whose work has inspired so many of us at WayForward. Our condolences go out to his family, friends, and fans." Obviously, Kunio-kun series, you know, beloved, and that River City Ransom, number one among those. Absolutely. It's a bummer, and rest in peace. Let's see.
Absolutely.
Let's get to the polls. Let me bring these up. Go to this one first, and then I'm going to go over here. I asked, do you have or do you plan to get a pro-style controller for your console? This was inspired by that new Xbox Elite Core version that's a little bit less spendy. About half and half. 49.3% said yes. 50.7% said no. Patrick, do you have one of these? Would you buy one? I don't know.
People are gonna... So at some point I'm prompted. Is it in here? I don't know. At some point Microsoft sent me an Elite controller.
Sure.
Like, it was just, you know, usually companies will like send you an email. It's like, could we send you this? And something like that, I'd say no. I don't have a use for it, but it just showed up. And so, like, I mean, it's a really nice controller. Like, pulling off the D-pad is really neat. But, you know, it's got the tabs in the back, which I understand the point of those. But the first thing I did was unbox it, plug in a charger, rip off the tabs on the back, and throw it in a drawer over here. And so I think that might be an answer to your question.
There it is.
Like, for me, it's more, can I, like, stuff like Drift, which I've been fortunate to only have like one encounter with on my Switch, and so that's like more top of mind with me. Like, the pro level stuff doesn't really impact the style of games that I play, like, which it's, you know, I don't play a lot of live service shooters or things with loadouts, and I just haven't found a use case for a lot of the games that I play. I've tried like with the Steam Deck, because they added it there, and it's like, when I first tried the Steam Deck, some of the games didn't have it disabled by default, and so I'm playing Elden Ring, and I was like, why do I keep casting a spell? And it's like, oh, because it's assigned to a button on the back of this thing.
Yeah, I only when I'm like playing a shooter on console for a very long time, which just doesn't happen much anymore because I'm playing on keyboard and mouse most of the time. What it was, I using those bumpers. Otherwise, I keep them on there, but you tap the top, like the connect button 3 times, and it turns them off automatically. So it's like, okay, and I just kept them off. And then I play with them. Kyle Hilliard was on here yesterday saying how he just likes to fidget with them. That's what I do now. I fidget with them.
I like the weight. I will say that's the one.
Yes, yeah.
That is like a tangible thing that I noticed, like,
and it's the weight is based in the palms too. Like it puts all the weight in the handles, which makes it just sit in your hand. That does feel very good. The drift thing. It sounds like most of these new controllers, the elite ones, still are all mostly using the old style of sticks that still have drift. I think Sony said they were going to sell the Hall effect analog sticks, which is the thing that cannot drift because it uses magnets to tell where you're pressing. So hopefully more controllers get that option. All right, I'm going to ask a new poll for tomorrow. Let's get it written up here. Are you going to listen to Hideo Kojima's podcast? I'm going to put Game Mess Mornings in here.
Hold on. Can you ask if they're going to listen to past the first episode?
Right. Past the first, yes. Now I might. I was going like, yes, I did. No, I'm like, I don't know. That's a good question. All right, there we go. Yes and no. And there we go. All right, everybody. There we go. Patrick, what are you up to? We got going over on Waypoint and anywhere else? Anything you want to pitch to the people?
Yeah, the most recent accomplishment of mine was I finished Elden Ring on stream. I earlier this year played, I don't know, 40, 50 hours of it when we were in the throes of that game's release in late February and March. And then, nature of my job kind of took me away from it, and then had enough distance. It was like, I don't remember what I was doing. How long is this game? Another 80 hours? Shit, I love these games. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And so I did what any good video game writer does was, well, if I turn it into content, then maybe I can get to the end of this game. And so for the last 6 weeks, once a week, I've been playing all day long, starting at about, so it jumps in midway if you were to go back to youtube.com/waypointvice, or I think some of the archives are still up at twitch.tv/waypoint. We start around the end of me fucking up a Volcano Manor quest look, I love these games, but at the point that you're making an open world game and you're marking NPCs on the map, like maybe you could make like the quest like a little easier to track. I'm just saying I've played all these games. I've beaten all these games.
That's allowed to say purpose.
It.
I believe you have to get good or something in this. So this is your fault, Patrick.
I beat it. I got good. I didn't summon. I need. Let me solo her. Go fuck yourself. Like maybe let me solo her. Now I did bring a mimic in, so I don't know if that counts. It's like a 1.5, But yeah, so if you want to go check that out, I just finished that game. It was a lot of fun playing that with
Have you had a chance to talk about this on a podcast where like you've elaborated on your thoughts? And if not, just give us the quick preview. Like, how are you feeling now that you beat it?
Yeah, I think I like Elden Ring less than most. I think it is a very good game. I would be interested in like downloading like the 4-person co-op mod as like a way to go back to that game.
For sure.
But it's so big, it's so sprawling. I don't know that like any of the side dungeons were interesting enough that like I ever want to play them again. So it feels like a really interesting swing by From Software to reimagine. Look, Dark Souls is really popular. Like we want to keep making these like medieval style like games, but like we're not going to do Dark Souls 4. And so I think Elden Ring is the most interesting way to tackle how do you reimagine a Dark Souls style game and give it some like a fresh feeling of life. And I think that by all accounts, it succeeds in doing that.
Yes.
But like, the horse is underutilized and like just disappears from the game at a certain point. It's too long. Like it probably should be about half the length that it is. It's a tremendous accomplishment, but more than anything, finishing Elden Ring, I come away going, I could not be more like this is what they did the first time they tried to do this. And in the same way that, Breath of the Wild, I consider, a similar sort of amazing accomplishment is like, wow, this is the first time you tried this style of game and this is what you produced. Like, good Lord, what would you do with lessons learned from this? And so that's kind of where I ended. It's a tremendous accomplishment, a pretty good game. Not all, Bloodborne remains at the top of the throne for me. But yeah, it's a very good game, but makes me more excited about the future of FromSoft more than anything. Give me my mech game, please.
Yeah, sounds like you probably get it right. Yeah, that's what the word is. So yeah, I after finishing Elden Ring, my big thing is I can't. The world was too much at the time, but getting away from it, like, man, that world. Just you think about all the places, and then you like, oh, then I went to that place after that, and it gets really stuck in your craw for a long point of time.
Oh, and it ruins. So I just I played. What was the one that came out 2 weeks ago? Thysium.
Yeah.
Yes. And that game has a really unique spin, Bloodborne adjacent combat, and that part works. The world is so boring and lifeless and uninteresting. And I just finished playing 3 or 4 hours of Steel Rising, which is the new game from the studio behind, I think, Greedfall, Spiders. And this is where you play a robot bodyguard of Marie Antoinette during a like robot French Revolution. It's a wild setup. And that game also has a unique approach to combat. It's more Dark Souls, but with like you're manipulating like elemental states like freeze and fire and electricity. It's got its own cool ideas. Like it works. The world is lifeless and boring and interesting to look at.
It's going to be a rough couple of years for other developers trying to like keep up with the Joneses, and now the Joneses are FromSoft. It's going to be rough.
And it's one of those things that is, for all my criticisms of Elden Ring, and I think they're valid, especially within the framework of my expectations for that studio and what they can and do accomplish. It's stuff like that where you just realize how much they're operating at a different level, in which, you know, a Steel Rising or, you know, spends all its time thinking about the combat, and it's a really important, it's vital. It doesn't work if the combat doesn't work, but then you have a better understanding and appreciation for all the other stuff they're doing that lifts that as well, and just no one comes anywhere close.
Mm-hmm. All right. Right after this, coming up right now, well, we will be playing the Elden Ring of Sonic games, Sonic 06, with Dan Reichert taking the wheels on that. Also, I'll be joining them. The voicemail dump truck will be later today, so stick around all day. We should be just going all through from here on out. So hang out with us here on Giant Bomb, and we'll be back with more Game Mess tomorrow. Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you, everybody, for watching today. I really appreciate it. Best audience of gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.